having no desires, with his heart and self under control, giving up all possessions, performing action by the body alone, he commits no wrong. Such a person has won over his heart or her heart, his self, and also her body. It's a very great quality to be able to give up possessions. If anything makes a person run around their whole life, it's possessions. If a person runs only for things that he needs, then it's understandable, because everyone has to do things to maintain the body. If you're hungry and therefore go and search for food, then it's right that you should do so. There is a need that God has given to you, and it's part of nature. But a person that runs after food, even when one is full up, is a person who's chasing after possessions. His needs are satisfied, and therefore he doesn't need these things at the moment, but he goes in search of them in case he needs them in the future. A person that goes running after these things is that person that goes after possessions. Look at this. A part of the word in the second line, parigraha. This leads to a lot of nonsense. In the 5, is there anyone that's Jain here? Okay. In the 5 characters, 5 main noble truths of Jainism, one of the most important is aparigraha, giving up all possessions. The others are satya, truth, ahimsa, non-violence, brahmachari, celibacy, and accord, refraining from getting angry. And by celibacy, you don't mean not getting married. Celibacy is a state of mind, not a state of the body. Aparigraha giving up all possessions is a very important thing, and it means a person who's giving up all possessions, he has no intention left to collect more things. Shri Krishna says in this verse, when a person has 3 qualities, look, it says, at the end, he commits no wrong. If a person has these 3 qualities, then he commits no wrong. These qualities are having no desires, next, having his heart and self under control, and next, giving up all possessions. Such a person with these 3 qualities performs actions by the body alone, otherwise the body will not be maintained. Sharirat ne prashidye na karma, as Shri Krishna said earlier in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. Such a person performs actions by the body alone, yet he does not commit any sins. We now consider these 3 qualities in turn. The first is having no desires. There's a saying in Gujarati that asha amarche, meaning that wishes are eternal, but they're eternal in keeping a person chasing. Something that gives a person courage and assurance in difficult situations is different, and having desires is different. If a person has suffered losses in his business, then he'll remember he had such high hopes for his business, and therefore does not worry, because the desire and confidence to earn, he has this desire and confidence to earn £2 million by next year. Such a desire is a completely different thing to the desire that Shri Krishna is talking about in this verse. Desires paralyze a person. They are like a coconut tree whose roots are on the ground. The fruits are high up in the sky, and there's nothing else in the tree. The root is underneath the ground, is a past, and the fruit is the future. Desires for fruits are always in the future. You remember something you've done in the past, and therefore have a wish for the future, and look up at the sky. But the present situation gets damaged by that. A person that sits down with wishes, yet does not make any efforts, thinking that they'll come, everything we find tomorrow, can never get anything done in his life. This is because one does not make the efforts. If one doesn't make efforts, then there's no results. You can't sit at the bottom of a coconut tree and wish for those coconuts to fall down. You've got to do something about it. If a person stands at the bottom of the coconut tree and waits for the coconuts to fall on his head, then the coconut will only fall when it has to fall. Understand that you're not pulling the fruits towards you by having wishes. It does not make any difference in the time it will take to bring down the fruit. The fruit will only come when it has to come. The consequence will only come when it has to come. But the wishes we have in our imaginations destroy our present moments. Such a person is wasting the present. A person stares at a coconut tree and his heart hurts. His head hurts. The fruit will only come when it has to come. When you stand at the bottom of a coconut tree, then you get the shadow of the coconut which protects you from the sun, but this is not trying to say that it's going to stay there as soon as the sun keeps moving. In the same way, you will not get rid of your difficulties just by having wishes and not doing anything about them. You'll only be able to get rid of your difficulties if you're making efforts in the present. Otherwise, you won't be able to do anything. This is a rational attitude, and that's the way of wisdom. There is no use in having wishes because they damage the present. As thinkers said very nicely, that the greatest crime that a person does to oneself is spoiling the present tense. A person that spoils the present by thinking about the past and the future commits the greatest crime to herself. Such a person is her own biggest criminal. This is because what we have is the present. The past is a history, the future is a mystery, and the present is a gift, and that's why it's called a present. It's the present tense, and that's why it's called a gift. Another word for gift is present. That's why what you have is a present, and that's why it's called a gift. God has given us this very big gift that's a present. A person that has desires is making wrong use of this gift from God. Therefore, from the point of view of wisdom, it's a waste of time to have desires. If you look at it from the point of view of devotion, then the person told God that he's learnt from his experiences in the past that when he had desires, then they never came into fruition. When a person thought that it would be nice if something happened to him, that desire never came into fruition. In fact, the opposite happened to what he wanted. When he thought that he would get something on reaching, shadow on reaching somewhere, in fact, there was just sunshine there. When he saw the garden and thought he would get flowers, in fact, he got thorns and his hand started bleeding. When he had dreams of seeing the rainbow, in fact, in reality, he woke up and he saw a thunderstorm. Whenever this person has wishes, then he ended up unsuccessfully chasing them. Therefore, he tells God that he will no longer have any wishes. Whenever he has desires, he felt he had to get them, but his past experiences show that whenever he needed God in the past, then God came and helped him, so none of his work was left undone. He did not imagine it, yet God came and held his hand. Therefore, he tells God he does not need to have any wishes anymore. Asha Pat Shate Bada, meaning a person gets tied into bondage because of desires. Desires become addiction to a person. They have the same effect as caffeine. Even from a devotional perspective, the person tells God that he will stop having wishes. He tells God that whatever God does is right and he will accept that. A person only has desires when he thinks that what he has in a present moment is not right. He therefore wishes for something good to happen to him in the future. Whatever the situation is at the present, it's right. When then is a need to have desires? A devotee accepts life and is freed from desires, says Nirashi, the first word of this verse. The word Nirashi has a negative meaning in Gujarati of hopeless, but it's not like that here. Nirashi is a quality and a strength and not a weakness. It's a quality which is to be acquired. The Karma Yogi tells God that he understands that there will be consequences to his actions. The consequences have been coming, and he will do actions in the future that will bring further consequences. When there's this, then there's no need to have wishes. If there's 2 chairs in a room, and you go and put another 2 chairs in a room, then that'll mean there's 4 chairs in that room. Whenever you need, there'll always be 4 chairs there. If there were 2 chairs in a room, and you go to bring more chairs, then you think nice if there's 5 chairs in a room, but then nothing will happen because there's 4 chairs in that room. If you wish that there'll be 3 chairs, then that won't happen either. This is because nobody else goes into that room apart from you. In the same way, nobody goes into the karma safe depository box apart from us, and it's better that they don't. The safe depository box in which we store our karmas cannot be opened by anyone else. Nobody operates that karma box apart from us. Therefore, the Karma Yogi tells God that the consequences will come from the actions that he has performed. Why then should he have wishes? Because he knows that when the karma becomes ripe, then the fruit of that karma will come. When fruits are to come, then they come, meaning yasmacha cha yacha yata ya yacha yavasha yata cha, meaning whoever has acted wherever, in whatever situation, from whoever, in whatever way, they will get the fruit of actions in the same situation, in the same way, from the same person. The Karma Yogi tells God that this is a universal principle, and therefore there is no need for them to manipulate the system by having wishes. Why should he harm his mind by having desires? Why does he not improve his actions in the present? When one thinks about this, then he becomes a nirashi, the first word of this verse. Therefore, whenever you look at it from the perspective of knowledge, devotion, actions, gnan, bhakti, karma, the nirashi is the one true right state. Srimad Adi Shankaracharya defines nirashi in his commentary of the Gita as nirgata ashishya yasmat sahan nirashi yata chitatma, meaning he from whom all expectations have departed and who has controlled the mind, the body, and the senses. Why should one have expectations? There is no point. In such a person, the mind, body, and senses act in accordance with his wishes. Ask yourself whether your mind, your body, and senses work according to your wishes. In the majority of the cases, they do not. This is the second quality, it says here in this verse, to have the heart and the body under one's control. There's an event in Buddha's life, and he was walking and talking with his brother and his disciple Anand. Suddenly a fly came and sat on Buddha's shoulder. Buddha slapped his shoulder to make the fly go away, and the fly flew away. Anand saw that he had made the fly go away. They walked 10 steps, then Buddha slapped his shoulder once again. At that time, there was no fly. Anand saw that the first time he slapped his shoulder, there was a fly there, and he did the right thing in slapping it. But now, there was no fly there, yet Buddha was slapping his shoulder. Just look at how much detail the pupils observed the teacher. There's no need to criticize a gossip, but because they want to learn and gain something. Anand asked Tathagat, another name for Buddha, why he did this? Because it's clear for the first time there was a fly there, but it was not so clear the second time round. Buddha replied that the first time the fly was there and he slapped his shoulder, he didn't need to give the order to his hand. His hand went there without his order. His hand went without asking him. Anand said that he didn't understand because the fly was there and it was so natural that the hand would go there as well. Buddha said, yes, it was, because the fly was there, the hand went there, but the hand did not go there because I told it to go there. It is my hand, and therefore it should go upon my instructions. The fly did go in the end, but I realized that my hand went there without my instructions. That is why the second time I'll give specific training to my hand only to go there when I give it my instructions and not to go there without my order. My hand should go according to my order. Anand asked what the difference was between the two. Buddha said there's a very big difference. The hand that can slap a fly away without my order can also strangle someone's throat without my order. If my hand does not ask me for instructions when it goes to slap a fly, then it may not ask for my instructions when trying to grab a knife to kill someone or trying to grab someone's throat. My mind, my body, and my senses should always act upon my instructions. This much control is here, the second word of this verse, yachachitatma. This is when each of the senses in the body are under one's control. It's said about Mahavir Swami, the leader of Jainism, that the quality of non-violence had gotten so much into his blood that whenever he slept at night, he would only sleep on one side throughout the night. He would not even turn sides. Why? Because if there was an insect in the jungle that came in the middle of the night, then this would stop them getting squashed and therefore stop ahimsa, violence happening to them. Non-violence should not even happen unknowingly. Therefore, whether you're awake or asleep, your complete body should be under your control. When we sleep, then we move around and turn so much. Even in your sleep, your whole body should be completely under your control. And not only your body, but your mind and your intellect. Your soul should direct all of these things. Such a person is yatachitatma. The third quality is aparigraha, which is part of the word in the second line. Aparigraha means giving up all possessions. One must have this aparigraha attitude. Who understands what giving up possessions means? Anyone? It means balanced. When one doesn't give up the possessions, when a person doesn't give up their possessions, then this leads to a social problem. If someone has a lot of possessions, then someone someone else feels deficient. Because of this possessiveness, there is an imbalance in society. There are two classes created as a result of this, the haves and the have-nots. The consequence of this is that one person has so many things that he's over-consuming, and the other people are dying of hunger. This is because of possessiveness. This is bad enough, but this poison runs deeper. Because of this, there's seeds of envy from people towards other people. All of this started because of possessiveness. The have-nots have this envy towards the haves. All of this, they think that they have not got that thing and other people have it. The concept of haves and have-nots not as clear as people make it out to be. Not everyone's either a homeless, hungry person walking the street or a big businessman coming in driving a Ferrari down the road, who's definitely not a lawyer. It's not that clear. The level of haves and have-nots is very, very small. It's a very relative phenomenon. If a person has a car and his neighbor has two cars, then the person with a car considers himself as a have-not and he considers his neighbor to be a have. If this neighbor has two cars, but another person in the neighborhood has two Italian imported cars, then the person with normal cars becomes a have-not, and the person with the Italian Ferrari becomes a have. A person may have four cars, but if they're not imported from the stylish Italian manufacturers, then he becomes a have-not. He becomes envious of people with imported cars. It's a very relative term, and we cannot say that this poor person has envy for the extremely rich person. It's not like that. Every person has a relative level of envy. All of us have our own circumferences. If you go to a temple in India and see beggars sitting on the steps, then these circles of envy are relative to each other. In fact, the bigger the gap between the haves and the have-nots, then the less amount of envy. Our minds may not accept it, but psychologists say that the bigger the gap, then the smaller the circle of envy, and the smaller the gap, then the larger the circle of envy. Imagine there's two women beggars sitting opposite each other on the steps at the entrance of the temple. They each have their own circle of envy. If a woman goes to a temple wearing a 5,000 pound sari, then the beggars won't have an intense need for it, and they may just only look at it. They are content with their worn and torn saris. But if you give one beggar 200 rupees, and you give the second beggar 50 rupees, then what will that second beggar think about the first beggar? That second beggar will envy the first beggar, because that first beggar is in that second beggar's circle of envy. She will have no envy of that woman's sari which costs £5,000, or even the 10,000 that the woman has in his purse, but she's envious of that beggar next to her getting 150 rupees more than her. Think about that. Everyone has their own circles of envy. The woman with the expensive sari is outside the beggar's circumference of envy. She is far away from them. In the same way, the woman with the sari has her own circumference of envy. Every person has their own circumference of envy, and this envy is created because of parigra, possessiveness. The more things that you gather, then the more you become that target of envy. The more possessions you gather, then the more people would envy you. Their attention will fall on you. When Guruji was young, his grandmother always used to tell him that, son, whenever we sit down to eat, then the attention of someone hungry falls on us. There's a very famous saying in the villages, Najar lagi jai. Who's heard of this? Najar lagi jai. Very Gujarati saying. When someone has their attention on you, then they want you to give something to them because they have a deprivation. They have a craving that you have something, but they don't have it. When this attention of hungriness and envy comes, then it hurts. This is why they say that whenever you eat while someone's attention falls on you, then your stomach may start hurting, you may throw up. I don't fully believe this, but it's true that the psychological effect is that when someone's attention falls on you, then you will not enjoy that material thing. If a person has all the possessions he could need, but does not enjoy those possessions, then this is the root cause of it. Many people say that they have a lot of possessions, wealth, a nice house, servants, but they don't have satisfaction, happiness, and so on, because people's attention has fallen on the possessions and wealth and so on that they have. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that other people's attention affects your faith. It's an attention of envy. is an intention of a sense of deprivation. In order to gather possessions, a person's worked hard for them, but other people think that they've also worked hard and sweated and toiled with him. Therefore, other people think that they've played a part in it. If you think about it, then you realize that everything you have got has come from society. This leads to envy. The consequence of this is that life becomes a struggle. Struggle turns into conflict. Conflict turns into war. Whatever wars there have been, the root reason for them is possessiveness. Every Tirthankar, who's heard of Tirthankars from Jainism? The great teachers of Jainism, Tirthankars, a very great thing in showing us what aparigraha, giving up possessions, is. They did this by practicing what they preached. They were kings and yet they left everything. Why? To show that one can really give up their possessions. While those possessions belonged to the king, then they did not belong to the people. The king gave up these possessions in order to give them to the people. The possessions then became everybody's. This is aparigraha. The true meaning of aparigraha is to use the possessions that you have collected for the good of society and the people in it. This is because you've got these things from society. Also, you should only keep the possessions that you need. I remember a very good example of aparigraha from Muhammad Paygambah. He never kept anything with him. His pupils used to come and give their possessions to him. When evening came, then you'd only keep those things that he needed and sell everything else that he was given. He never kept those things. He got old, and one day he became really ill at night. He was trying to sleep, but he found it difficult to do so. He kept turning sides. It became the middle of the night. He called his wife and asked why a person like him, who gave away all his possessions, could not sleep at night. He asked his wife whether she had kept any possessions safe inside the house. As soon as he asked his wife this question, the wife became quiet. She thought it remarkable that he could find out about these things because she had kept 5 dinars, which was the currency at the time, dinars, safe inside the house. The wife told him that she had kept 5 dinars inside the house. He told her to give it away. She asked who could she give it to at the time in the middle of the night. She said that she had kept it because he was ill and he may need it in case they need to call a doctor or bring medicine. She said that they had given away things their entire lives and she will give this away when they wake up. She therefore told him to go to sleep. He told her that he could not sleep because she had kept those 5 dinars inside the house and told her to go and give it away to someone. He told her that he had not gathered these possessions throughout his whole life. The wife asked him who would come at that time in the middle of the night as there was desert all around and it was very cold. She told him that she would give it to someone in the morning. He told her that he had a wish to give it away and that will be matched by someone sent by God to take it away from them. He told her to give it away. His wife realized that she couldn't break his stubbornness, and so she picked up the 5 dinars from underneath her pillow. As soon as she opened the door of a house, tears came out of her eyes. A beggar who was wearing torn clothes was standing outside the door, shivering all over. The wife looked at her husband and realized how remarkable his thoughts were. She gave the 5 dinars in the hand of the beggar. Muhammad Paygambah heard the sound of the 5 coins and he closed his eyes forever. Just 5 dinars had held back someone's life. He was so aparigraha that he did not know where his wife had kept the 5 dinars, yet he could not sleep at night. He even went so far as to say that his life will not go so long as he had those possessions. Possessions do not just harm other people, but they can also harm you as well. Until now, we saw that possessions harm other people because society has become divided into the haves and have-nots. This is fine, but we do not get happy either by collecting these possessions. There was once a robin that picked up a lump of bread with its beak and it flew away. There were other birds behind it, such as the crow, the crane, and the sparrow. All of these birds had the attention on a lump of bread in the beak of the robin. The poor robin was carrying the big lump in its mouth, flying for its life, while all these other birds were hitting it with their beaks. The robin was in so much pain, so sad, there was nothing that it could do. The big birds were hitting it so much with their beaks. One hit was so hard, and the robin screamed. As soon as it screamed, it opened its beak, and a lump of bread fell from its beak into the ground. The robin saw that the other birds had rushed after the lump of bread, and the robin went calmly towards its homes. Avadutta said that he saw this event and decided that whenever someone has a possession such as this lump of bread, then society will not leave that person. The person may have beauty, power, fame, respect, but society will not leave them. Every person will think that that person has recognition, beauty, wealth, and will try and get something out of them. They will try to bake their bread. Look at Michael Jackson. Society does not leave such a person. This will happen when one gathers possessions. Then should you not gather possessions? Should you not attain beauty, wisdom, and power? No. You can keep these things, but you should learn to leave them at the right time. Because if you do not know how to leave them, then these big birds in the form of society will hit you hard, and you lose that internal peace and inner poise because of it. In the same way that you take your coat off when you reach home, you should learn off how to take the coat of wealth, power, and beauty at the right time. You need this compartmentalization. The situation in society at the moment is that when one thinks that when he gets more and more possessions, he'll be happy. Shri Krishna says in reality, the attitude should be that a person stays happy even when he has his possession, even when his possessions decrease. I'll give you a very simple example. When people go to someone else's house to eat, then they're always happy, but do we ever get happy at calling other people to our houses to eat? There are many people that only get happy when they go to eat at someone else's house. This should also have people run to their houses to eat. Therefore, a person definitely gets happy when his possessions increase, but does a person also get happy when his possessions decrease or when he has to give something away? If a person gets happy from this, then consider him as someone who's attained the state where he can give up all possessions. Such a person gets happiness from giving something away. This is a very big state of happiness. And I'm talking about material things here. The happiness that you get from giving away something away is greater than the happiness you can get from accumulating possessions. When a person has no desires, has his heart and self under control, and gives up all possessions, then what does it say here? Such a person performs actions by the body alone. Commentators also say that these actions, in order to maintain the body, are all actions that can be naturally done with the body. The body breathes by itself, and therefore you can do that. The body gets hungry, therefore you can eat food. When a person performs action by the body alone, he commits no wrong. This is what happens when all the above transformations have taken place. However, sometimes when a person makes efforts, then he can't be without desires, have his heart and self under control, nor can he give up possessions. There's a reason for this. Everyone knows that sins bring sorrows, yet they still carry on committing sins. Everyone knows that punya, who knows what punya is? It's the opposite of sins. It doesn't have an English translation. It brings happiness, yet they're still put off doing things that will bring punya. The scriptures say, Punyasya phala ichanti, punya nichanti manava, na pap phala ichanti, papam kuruvanti yagnata. Meaning, everyone wants the fruits of punya, yet they do not want to do punya. Nobody wants the fruit of sins, but people want to run to commit sins. People plan properly to commit sins. Why? Do they not know at the time of sins that they're sinning? They do know, yet they still commit sins. The reason for this is that they do sins under the excuse of doing a punya. Doing sins is very threatening. Therefore, whenever one has a wish of committing a sin, then the mind and the intellect will open an umbrella of punya. The outside support for it will seem like a punya, yet the person is committing a sin. If a person is collecting money for the wrong means, then he thinks that if he gets wealth from it, then he will use it for good purposes. He'll create a temple in a town. He'll create a place for the homeless or donate to a hospital. He then opens this umbrella of punya and begins committing sins. This is because if he did not open the umbrella of punya, then he would not have had the courage in order to commit the sins initially. The inbuilt system and inbuilt program that God has given us means that the body starts shivering when it's about to do something wrong. The mind immediately tells it no. The soul inside tells us to stop what we're doing. This is inbuilt, and you don't have to make efforts to get this system. It comes from God. But how can you then get rid of this shivering, and how can you stop your conscience from biting? There is one way. Give it the hat or the umbrella of punya. This is when the process of self-deception begins. There is another thing to self-deception. A person tells himself that he'll do that thing once and he'll not do that thing again. Whenever a human being has a wish to commit a sin, then they will think when they introspect that it will be fine if they do it once. Then they say they will not do it again. The one time then becomes one time and then another one time. Whenever you decide to do it wrong, then you don't decide to do it 10 or 15 times. You decide to do it one at a time. However, when people decide to do punya, then decide to do 10 or 15 punyas at a time. When a person turns 60, then they feel like dedicating their lives to religion. They decide to do a Vishnu Yag, take the entire families on pilgrimage, and do various other religious activities. They do different religious activities every month. When a person is planning to commit sins, then he never says he's going to do 10 sins at one time. He always commits sins one at a time. But one at a time serves as a stepping. After doing it, he becomes closer and closer to committing other sins. He climbs one more step and then gets closer, then climbs another step and gets closer still. As a result of this, he becomes closer and closer to committing sins and falls deeper and deeper. This step is not there for him to climb up. In fact, it's there to make him climb down. The third reason for which a person commits sins is that he knows that when he commits sins he'll get sorrows. Whenever he commits a sin, then he knows that he loses. This is because sin can never win. It always loses. But whenever defeat comes, then he puts the blame on it to other people. Whenever a person suffers losses during a defeat, then he always blames this on other people or other circumstances. He thinks that if the other person had not done something, then he would not have been in that situation. A person is committing scandals and then says that if the old government had stayed, that nobody would have found out. How can nobody find out when you have done something wrong? When the consequences of sins come and a person suffers losses because of sins, then he always blames other people. If a person has the attitude of blaming other people when things go wrong for him, then understand that such a person can never be free from sins. This is because only one type of person becomes free from sin. One who sees his own faults and sees that he or she did something wrong. This is when a person realizes that it's her fault and the guilt becomes so strong that she doesn't keep the rock, she throws it away. But when a person blames other people and the circumstances, then he says that he is right, and whenever he is right, then he is ready to commit a sinful act. A person who finds fault in other people can never be freed from sins. Such a person falls deeper and deeper into sin. A person needs to be able to take responsibility for his or her own mistakes. A person needs to learn to be able to take responsibility for the actions and the consequences of his actions. When a person does this, then he will be freed from sins. This is what Dharma teaches us. I always say there are 3 schools that teach people how to be happy. What are they? 3 schools that teach people how to be happy. Go on, new people? Come on, one, obvious one. 3 schools that are there to make people happy. Number 1 is science, tries to make us happy. Number 2, politics. Third, religion. Science, politics, religion tried to make us happy. These 3 have one thing in common. They focus on how to make man or woman happy. They are active to give happiness to human beings. I'm not touching politics on purpose. We'll discuss it when it comes up later in the Gita. Science tries to make humans happy by saying that humans are unhappy because of external conditions. Scientists believe that once they change the outside circumstances, then humans will be happy. If one is too hot, science will invent an air conditioner and say, now you can be happy. If one is too cold, then science will invent a heater and say, no, now you can be happy. Science focuses on making humans happy by changing their external circumstances. That's 1, science. Number 2, politics says that your unhappiness is as a result of other people. Politicians say, once you elect me into power, then I will sort them out. This is why politics is a game. Politicians go to the poor in the slums and say that these rich people are sucking your blood. yet the money for them to fight elections comes from rich people. Then they go to the well-off and say that these people are taking your hard-earned money, give me your vote. Because politics blames others for one's condition, politicians divide society. The very simple policy of divide and rule. One who divides society and gets elected to fill his own belly is a politician. I'm not just talking about government politics, but also the politics that takes place inside the house. Each individual is a politician. This is because we always say that someone else is the reason for our unhappiness. Therefore, people try to save themselves from other people, and politics is a way of saving yourself from other people. Politics is very broad. Therefore, do not think that only something that happens in Parliament building or what you read about in newspapers every morning is politics. Politics is a very wide phenomenon. Every individual has this politics within him. When you need to save yourself from other people, then politics becomes necessary. If people are divided, then the politics begins. Therefore, politicians say that the reason for your unhappiness is other people. Third one, religion, on the other hand, says that your unhappiness is not due to the outside circumstances, not due to someone or something else, but yourself. How can someone else make you unhappy? Nobody can make you sad until you yourself ask to be sad. Once you yourself get rid of your sadness, by understanding yourself, then nobody can make you happy. Until you do not change yourself, then no matter how much you try to change your circumstances, how much you try to change people, there will be no such consequences in the end. You must change yourself. That is why Dharma is a process of internal transformation. It's a process of self-development. You must change first. What I'm trying to say is that while a person does not try to change themselves and does not take responsibility for their own sins, bad traits and wrong habits, then they can never be freed from sins. Until a person is freed from sins, then he can't be dharmic and he can't experience God. Such a person can't be freed from karmas. Therefore, Shri Krishna says in this verse that a person who becomes free from desires, has his heart and self under control, and gives up his possessions, such a person performs works with the body alone and commits no wrong. Verse 22.